Chapter 237. Aubrey arrived in Belridge at noon. On her way there, she called Sonia to find out where Lucian was staying. After getting off the plane, she headed straight to the hotel. When she arrived and saw the hotel entrance, suspicion filled her mind, and she frowned. Given Lucian's status, he should be staying at a 5-star hotel at the very least whenever he was on business trips. Even though the hotel before her was considered respectable, it did not fit his status. Unless his reason for coming here was to find that bitch. Aubrey's heart sank as she thought about this. She quickly walked to the front desk and asked, "Hi, I'm looking for someone. Can I trouble you to help me find out which room Lucian Farwell is staying in?" The receptionist looked at her and was about to ask about her relationship with him when she immediately added, his fiancé. I called him just now, and he told me his room number, but I don't have a good memory, and forgot what he said. I don't want to call him again and disturb his work. Could you check for me, please?" After saying this, she flashed the receptionist a polite smile. The receptionist had noticed her the moment she entered and knew she was no ordinary person. After hearing her words, the receptionist no longer doubted her and quickly searched for Lucian's room number. Aubrey was delighted to get his room number so effortlessly, and her smile became more sincere. He won't be coming down anytime soon. Could you give him a key card to his room? I'll wait for him upstairs. The receptionist looked troubled as she replied, I'm sorry, we can't just away our guest's key card. Aubrey's smile froze. Then could you check if the room beside his is vacant and check me in? The receptionist agreed and completed the check-in process for her quickly. Right then, Roxanne and Larry returned from outside. After having breakfast, Lucian had to part ways with them due to work. Only then did Roxanne finally feel relieved. As they had nothing on in the afternoon, she had asked Larry to arrange meetings with the seniors. They had met yesterday so that she could apologize for leaving without notice. Thankfully, they did not take any offense. It was noon by time they returned to the hotel after their visits. Roxanne was slightly worried that she would bump into Lucian when they returned. She did not know how to face him. When she returned to the country, she had thought that the two would be strangers after not seeing each other for 6 years. He never expected so many things to happen between them, much less for his attitude toward her to change drastically. She could not help but feel her head hurt the moment she thought of him. When they arrived at the hotel entrance, she heard Larry whisper something in her ear. However, it did not register as her heart was all over the place. Here's your key card, said the receptionist. Roxanne raised her eyes subconsciously and her expression changed for the worse when she saw the woman standing at the front desk. Aubrey, what is she doing here? The conversation between them at the cafe the other day was still clear in her mind. She did not want to have anything to do with Aubrey. She lowered her gaze and wanted to leave quietly. As there was no response from her, Larry asked puzzledly, Roxanne, are you all right? She paused in her steps when she heard the question and knew there was escape for her that day. She lifted her head, and true enough, Aubrey had heard Larry's voice and was staring blankly in their direction. Chapter 238. Aubrey's heart sank as they locked gazes. As expected, Roxanne was staying at this hotel too. Since it was unavoidable, Roxanne had no choice but to keep her composure and walk to the elevator, pretending that she didn't see Aubrey. Aubrey saw Roxanne turning a blind eye to her. With gritted teeth, she strode over to Roxanne. Miss Jarvis, Mr. Morrison, what a coincidence. Are you two staying here too? Roxanne's brows creased slightly, but she planned to ignore Aubrey. Larry could tell what Roxanne was thinking, so he furtively moved between the two, separating Aubrey from Roxanne. Then he nodded politely, a bit sounding somewhat distant. A real coincidence indeed. Miss Pearson, You are before Larry could finish his sentence, Aubrey cut him off with a smile. Well, yes, Lucian is staying in this hotel too, so I'm planning to give him a surprise. I just got the key card to his room. As Aubrey spoke, she showed them the key card and pretended to have done it inadvertently. Then she retracted her hand and bragged, "Guess the receptionist saw the news of my wedding with Lucian. They just handed me the key card before I asked." She was implying that she would stay in the same room as Lucian and that everyone knew they were engaged. The three entered the elevator one after another while talking. With a grin, Aubrey stretched out her arm, wanting to press the button. However, Larry had already pressed the button. Toffler. Aubrey halted her movement after she saw that and gritted her teeth in irritation without making it obvious. What? They are staying on the same floor as Lucian? Is this really a coincidence? There were only 3 of them in the elevator. Roxanne was ignoring Aubrey blatantly while Larry had nothing to say to Aubrey. The atmosphere in the elevator was exceedingly depressing. Oh, right. What are the both of you doing here in Beldridge? With a smile plastered on her face, Aubrey clenched her fists and broke the silence while trying to suppress her displeasure. She wanted to know who was going after the other. Although she was facing Larry, she was looking at Roxanne from the corner of her eye. Roxanne remained straight-faced. It was uncertain if she didn't hear what Aubrey said or if she didn't mind where Aubrey was staying. We came to join a conference here yesterday, Larry replied briefly. A faint scowl appeared on Aubrey's face. Since the two had something to do here, Aubrey wondered what had brought Lucian here. The speculation she had in the morning became more intense in her heart. Aubrey couldn't hold back the anger she tried to conceal, and the smile on her face looked stiff. Is that so? Did you two meet Lucian in the past 2 days? I don't know if he is busy with something. Larry was about to speak when he saw Roxanne, who had been remaining silent beside him, frown. That made him swallow the words on the tip of his tongue. Mr. Farwell is a busy man. We wouldn't have the chance to meet, Roxanne said coldly. Before Aubrey could react, Roxanne got out of the elevator. As soon as the door opened, Aubrey followed behind Roxanne, looking gloomy. They had breakfast together this morning, and now she's telling me that they didn't meet? Ls she trying to make a fool out of me? Following Roxanne along the corridor and seeing her entering a room, Aubrey lifted her head and checked the room number. Then she took a look at the key card in her hands. All color drained from Aubrey's face. Lucian's room number was only a digit different from Roxanne's room number. Aubrey tried hard to convince herself that it was only coincidental that the two were staying on the floor. However, she couldn't accept that they were staying next door to each other now that she saw it with her own eyes. Now, Aubrey could no longer persuade herself that this was a coincidence. Chapter 239. Back in her room, Roxanne's expression looked grim as she spaced out on the bed. Roxanne never imagined she would encounter Lucian here. Moreover, she never expected Aubrey to come after him. It was beyond Roxanne's imagination how things would turn out if the 3 met. A faint scowl appeared on Roxanne's face. Wasting no time, she stood up and started to pack her luggage. She decided that she would avoid any trouble which she couldn't bear the consequences. After all, she had nothing left to do in Elkridge. Thus, it didn't matter. When she left, halfway through packing, she heard a knock on the door. Feeling slightly apprehensive, she raised her voice and asked, "Who is it?" From outside the door, Larry's voice sounded, "It's me. It's almost time for lunch. Should we grab something to eat?" Roxanne opened the door consequently and let Larry into the room. When Larry saw that Roxanne had almost done packing, he asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm thinking of leaving first since there's nothing left for me." "Toto here." Roxanne smiled. Apologetically, Lucian furrowed his brows. Is this because of Aubrey? Otherwise, why would you want to leave all of a sudden when you didn't mention a word about wanting to go back and when you seemed fine this morning? Larry was aware of the conflicts between the two, therefore, Roxanne didn't try to hide it and lowered her eyes as a form of confirmation. What can she do to you with me here? We'll keep each other a company. She wouldn't accuse you of having something to do with Mr. Farwell, would she? Larry was puzzled. I'll only want to save myself from trouble. After all, there's nothing left for me to do here, and I can leave whenever I want. So why should I make things hard for myself? Roxanne smiled faintly. After pondering for a while, Larry nodded in agreement. You're right. There's nothing much left to do here anyway. I'll go back too. Since you're leaving, let me pack up my stuff. Roxanne promptly nodded at that. Soon after, Larry and Roxanne both packed up their luggage and went to the Hotel Hobbit and check out of their respective rooms. They turned around and got ready to leave after checking out but met Lucian, who had just returned. At the entrance, Mr. Farwell, Larry greeted politely. As for Roxanne, she simply nodded her head coldly. Lucian saw them carrying their luggage. With his brows furrowed tightly, he asked, You two are leaving? The conference's over, and we have nothing to do here. It's time for us to leave. Please excuse us, Mr. Farwell, Larry said. He then turned to face Roxanne, unsure if she had anything to say to Lucian. However, Roxanne looked indifferent and left with her luggage right after he finished his sentence. It was lunchtime. Roxanne didn't want to encounter Aubrey coming down from her room and be troubled by the latter. Seeing that, Larry strode off right behind her. Lucian reached out and grabbed Roxanne's wrist. When she reached the entrance, Roxanne halted her steps and turned around, slightly tossing Lucian's hand on her wrist. Mr. Farwell, please behave yourself. Without loosening his grip, Lucian looked at Larry and asked, What time is your flight? It's the earliest flight. You won't be able to book a ticket now, Mr. Farwell. You shouldn't hold up our time. Larry sounded aloof after he saw Lucian gripping Roxanne's wrist. Lucian knitted his brows and said while staring at Roxanne, Well, that's great. I bought a ticket for the same flight too. Let's leave together. I'll think you should keep your fiancée accompanied, Mr. Farwell. She's just arrived and is waiting for you in your room. We'll be on our way now. Roxanne shook off his hand, spun on her heels, and walked off without looking back. Chapter 240. Lucian's expression dimmed as he watched Roxanne leave. She had seemed fine this morning and didn't look as though she wanted to leave. Thus, Lucian was confused by her sudden decision. If Lucian had heard it right, Roxanne had mentioned that his fiancé was waiting for him in his room. He wondered what she meant by that. As soon as the two were out of sight, Lucian instructed Caden in a low voice, Book plane ticket for the earliest flight back to Harrington. Caden carried out the instruction right away. Lucian turned around and walked into the elevator. With a solemn expression on his face, he wanted to see the person who dared to claim to be his fiancé, since Roxanne had said that his fiancé was waiting for him in his room. Lucian looked grim when he opened the door. He scanned the room after he entered the room, but no one was inside. Just as he was about to ask Caden to find out what was happening, someone knocked on the door. Caden quickly went to open the door, unsure of what to do when he saw the person standing at the door. He greeted, Miss Pearson. Where is Lucian? Aubrey craned her neck to look inside. Aubrey was sure she had heard some noise coming from inside Lucian's room from her room. Also, Lucian should be back at the hotel at this time. After looking around, Aubrey frowned as she didn't see Lucian. Then she tried to enter the room. Seeing that, Caden swiftly stopped her. Miss Pearson, this is Mr. Farwell's room. I don't think it's appropriate for you to come in. Aubrey ignored him and said, "It's just a matter of time for Lucian and me to get married. Why is it inappropriate for me to enter his room? Let me in." Caden didn't dare to stop Aubrey with too much force since she was a lady. Soon she managed to make her way into the room. Aubrey thought Lucian wasn't in his room since he didn't show himself even after she had caused such a big commotion. To her surprise, she saw Lucian sitting on the couch after she entered the room. Lucian had just returned from his business. He was sitting upright on the couch, with his suit on and his legs crossed, and looking at her emotionlessly, which made her feel a sense of oppression. When Aubrey met Lucian's gaze, she said carefully, "Lucian, you're here." Lucian remained expressionless as he stared at her. It suddenly dawned on him that the fiancée Roxanne had mentioned was Aubrey. Roxanne must have left in a rush because of Aubrey's unannounced arrival. "This is my room, of course. Elm here. As for you, what are you doing here?" Lucian's expression turned icy. Aubrey looked away with guilt. "Oh, it's nothing. I have some work to do here in Baldridge, and Mrs. Farwell told me you're here for a business trip. So I'm here to see you. Does Pearson Group have a project here in Baldridge? Why didn't I know that?" Lucian showed no mercy and exposed her. In recent years, Farwell Group had been acting as the middleman for many projects for Pearson Group. Hence, it was natural for Lucian to know of their businesses. Aubrey's expression changed, and she clenched her fists. She steeled herself and said, "We only started negotiating recently. It's not a done deal yet. I came here to give it a try." Aubrey was afraid Lucian would continue digging into it, so she immediately changed the topic. "Oh, right. Why are you staying in this kind of hotel? Did your partner book this for you?" As soon as she finished her sentence, Aubrey could feel that the temperature in the room had become colder.